So that's our theme 3, innovations for sustainable consumer behavior, nutritional security, and policies. And to do this, to chair this, we have our fantastic colleague from University of Sheffield. I call her Julie Panayiota Alevizou. She's a lecturer in marketing and expert in eco-labeling, and she has been working with the different government departments across Europe, actually. Yeah, and mostly in relation to how do we communicate sustainability, because we have been hearing a lot, like, the consumers are not aware, or the consumers would not do this, and how do we make ourselves heard? So that's where Julie comes from. So Julie, you would be chairing 2 subsessions. One is related to the policies, mostly for promoting the healthy and sustainable food consumption. And the second is related more from the industry perspective around product innovations, consumer behavior, and the nudges that we can have from industries or from the researchers to make sure that our behavior is moving towards more sustainability. Yeah, so Julie, over to you. And I'll be around covering a few colleagues who are unfortunately not available today. But since I've worked with so many of you for so many years, I think I can cover some of you. Okay, Julie, over to you.
So good afternoon, everyone. I'm very happy to be here and listen to all these amazing projects, especially the last panel talking about the unmanageable and the uncontrollable consumer. So even though we're not going to talk about consumption right now, we're going to talk about policies. And I would like to welcome Dr. Chiedza, as you heard before, senior lecturer at the University of Limpopo, South Africa. And she's joining me online. Hello, Chiedza. Just to know, you're on mute.
Yes, I know you.
Okay.
Am I audible? Yes.
So very briefly, can you please introduce your project and the main objectives of your project within the theme of innovations and policies for promoting healthy and sustainable food?
Okay, thank you. I didn't think I was here to introduce a project actually, because I did not have a project in terms of that particular theme. But I was just going to share my, my views in terms of the policies, around that. So what policies to put in place, and also because we know that with the, digital platforms, the agricultural digital platforms transformation is also being linked with the food system transformation. Hence, all that, even what we've been talking about, all of that has to do with policy. And hence, the policy tools in place, it's already what we've had from even the project. The policies can be put in place in terms of the research itself, in terms of the investments, the regulations, the infrastructure, and the incentives. So when we look at the agricultural digital platforms, so be it whether they are serving the producers or the consumers, so there are still issues there. And so when we do have issues that are can be solved by policy, that's how we end up with the the different policy innovations that we can have in place. So in terms of the digital platforms themselves, as they're still catching up, the issues of the data quality, we've heard about those, and there will be issues of interoperability, the intellectual property, and even the data privacy issues. And all that policy is space in that. So I would just then briefly say that the policies are there in response to those emerging issues. Thank you for now.
Thank you, Chiedza. And can we please hear Dr. Ramanjaneyulu? I think I pronounced it correctly.
I think he's having some technical difficulties.
Okay.
So we move on to
Sonal Choudhary.
Okay. Okay, so as you can see from the title, I wasn't prepared to provide this information in this panel, but I'll try and be very quick. This is my wonderful team from Rakesh, Raymond, Ramu, and myself, working with a government department in India. It's the Department for Agriculture and Farmers Empowerment. We really worked very closely with that department since 2019, and up until now, we are still working with them to look into food called millets, so a food crop called millets. And last year, actually, I'm sure not many of you would know, but it was an International Year of Millets, and it was announced by FAO. And that created some conversations around why we should be consuming millets, why we should be having millets, not just in India, but across the world, because it is nutritious, it is fibrous, it is it's helpful for diabetic patients, it is gluten-free, and whatnot. And similar sort of conversation happened about a few years ago for quinoa, when only 6 countries were growing quinoa. After the awareness of International Year of Quinoa, I think around 30 countries now grow it, and almost many countries are now consuming quinoa. And given the comparison between quinoa as a superfood, millets as a superfood, millets has an edge because of the climate resilience that it presents. It can grow in literally any environment. There has been a few projects funded within the UK as well, in and around millets, but mostly in a smaller scale. So we'll see how that goes. It is a very good additional product that we can incorporate in our bread, because we have been looking for more fibrous bread and more fiber into the diet. So hopefully, who knows, we might see millets in the UK as well. There are conversations going on with FCDO, which is Foreign Commonwealth Development Office, and to see whether or not UK is ready for trade in terms of millets. On 29th of October this year, there were around 40 different industry players. Approximately 5 of them, they came to us after this presentation saying that we are exploring ways to incorporate millets into our products. So things are happening, things are picking up. It's slow, but it's there. And we worked with the government of Orissa. We published our report in and around policy gap analysis, which was very well received by the government. We presented 14 action points to the government on 31st of January this year. On 27th of August this year, the government announced that 4 of the proposed action plans are already underway, which was a very good achievement of STFC Food Network to see that the government is looking forward. So very quickly, I don't want to go through all the slides. Very quickly, what we did was we looked into the program, which is called Orissa Millet Mission. It's a mission where they think that they were bringing in the departments together, the different departments together, for a common sort of goal, where they would want Orissa as a state within India to consume and produce more millets, so connecting the market as well as the farming community. We looked into the entire strategies and what they are doing. We went ahead, worked with the farmers, NGOs, different types of NGOs at the different sectors, different industry bodies as well, small, medium-sized. And there is a group called Self-Help Group, which is they organize the women entrepreneurs, especially coming from the tribal communities, to come together and actually invest their time into making different products which are rich in millets. So looking into the different sort of challenges they were having, we came up with a framework where you could actually position your policies, initiatives, or what you want to do first. So we came up with 2x2 metrics. One is where you have clear problems and clear solutions. Another, where you have clear problems but complex solutions. The third one was complex problems, clear solutions. And the fourth one, which was a little bit more challenging, was complex problems and complex solutions. And what we found was most of the energy was actually dedicated to quadrant number 4, which was difficult to, to make sure that, the things are there and the people can start seeing our actions in place. But some of the things which were really easy to do, clear problems, clear solutions, was not having that much of a focus. So we broke down the different actions, what the government should be taking first and what the government should be looking at towards the last. And I think it was well received. So I'll leave it at that point because this framework can be actually applied to literally any problems and solutions. Okay. Ramu, you can go next in terms of innovations for policy.
Thank you, Sonal. In India, across the country, now there is a greater interest in promoting millets. One of the key programs which began as the Millet Mission in Odisha, now people are copying in other states as well. So we also coordinate a lot of NGOs across the country, which we call as a Millet Network of India. So we coordinate that network. So we are also having discussion with them. So the key challenges, particularly from a policy point of view, is in India there is a lot of support which goes for the rice production. So rice crop, both in production and procurement, there is a lot of support which goes into it. And millets are basically an orphan crops where there is no support in production, nor in the support in the procurement. So we are trying to look at how this can be equated so that farmers who are growing millets also get an equitable support. I think that's one important step government should take in terms of policy change. Second, when we compare the major cereal crops, rice and wheat are high water consuming crops. The water footprint of rice and wheat is very high, and the nutrient content is not on par with the millets, whereas millets ecological footprint is very low. So we are trying to look at how this can be taken into account when the support is provided, so that the cost of production of millets can come down, so that they can compete in the market. Currently they are unable to compete in the market because of the skewed support systems which rice and wheat gets. So this is a second area we are trying to work on. So this requires more data analysis in terms of the costings, the policy supports. So we are trying to look at how we can work together in terms of generating the data so that effective solutions can be taken. The Odisha Millet Mission experience clearly shows that if there is a policy support, change is possible, and then we can shift from rice cultivation to millet cultivation, which reduces the water use and also significantly the methane emissions, which are one of the major issue, methane emissions and nitrous oxide emissions. So if that possibility is there, nearly 70% reduction will happen if that shift happens, and it requires more detailed studies. So that's what we are trying to look forward as a policy changes. And many times in India, another important issue is, while the agriculture is a state subject, many of the policy decisions are taken by the center. So we also need to engage with the center in terms of changing many of these policies. So that's the direction in which we are all trying to work on the policy issues.
Excellent, thank you very much. And I'm going to go to the second round of questions, which I'm trying to adjust a bit now, because Chiedza mentioned that this was not a project, but this was a view on digitization. So Chiedza, are you online?
Yeah.
Okay, so could you present, instead of saying what went well and what can improve, can you please mention some key challenges and also some opportunities?
Okay, thank you so much. So as far as this digital or agricultural digital platforms are concerned, and in terms of the policy, we can see that data can have an impact whether globally, nationally, or locally. And so the innovations in policies are also important, as well as their innovations in the agricultural digital platforms themselves. And what has already worked well in that space is that market access barriers have been lowered by this through digital platforms. But what is less successful is that there's still barriers to data transfer. So, and then you also have issues of harmonization of regulations and the security of the data itself. And so you have policies that can support the data privacy, but they're not really specific on how to leverage these digital platforms in order to attract investment or in companies that are developing around those technologies. So as I also mentioned earlier on, therefore, the issue of core development. So this could go with the software and the producer. So those are the less successful things that we can link to. I even hear my co-panelist here who was talking about, the regulations and all. Even once we have those markets, performing well, even if you're to access perhaps a market in a different country, the regulations, they have to do with the, how to access that. So for now, and lastly, there's still expenses. We've heard about that, expenses in the sharing of the data itself, with ease and efficiency. That is still an issue. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And back to Ramu. In terms of what do you see as positive from this side of the project and also as a challenge?
In terms of what went well, I think the partnership with Odisha government was very good. So they were very positive in terms of accepting organizing the discussions, giving access to the data, and also getting the partners together to discuss and then coming up with solutions. And they are also ready to implement the recommendations. I think that's a very positive thing, and Sonal played a very important role in making this happen. I think that's a very, very positive thing. And also the learnings which drawn from this project can also be applied in the other states. So I think that is also very important. The report which was made will be very, very useful in terms of helping the other states to adopt the same practices, because till then all the reports only looked at positive impacts. It has not looked into the critical bottlenecks and then how to go forward. And this report certainly helped us and helped others to understand that very well. I think that's a very positive thing which has happened. In terms of policy dialogue, we thought we should also do with the Indian Institute of Military Research and Government of India on the other policy issues, so that the equitable support systems can be created. And that didn't happen. Probably as we go along, probably we should do that. I think that didn't happen as we expected. There were conferences happened, but the knowledge on that itself is very low. So the dialogue could not go forward. So probably we need more deeper research into this aspect, particularly on the how the support systems can be changed at the national level so that the millets can become mainstreamed.
Yeah, thanks, Ramu. So I think Ramu covered what went really well. I would just like to focus on what did not go well. In terms of, so there was a lot of knowledge exchange. Yeah, and there is a difference between knowledge exchange taking place and knowledge translation actually happening. So that translation, those actors who would actually translate those knowledge, there were lack of them present, present when we were doing the dialogues. And especially government also recognizes that we really need to talk a lot in terms of new startups coming up, the businesses who are really interested in investing. So now, of course, the government of Odisha is now promoting that, invest in Odisha, invest in millets, invest in future, invest in healthy food. However, that investment would not just come from the government, but it would come from the private sector. So a little bit of a platform where both the public and the private entities interact and make sure that these knowledge exchange dialogues that we are having is actually translated into actions going forward. there is a policy, one angle, and actually having them embedded within the private sector and therefore in the consumer supply chain and the consumers consuming those products is another thing.
So final question to Chiedza. What are your top tips for future research and practice in this theme?
All right, thank you so much. So inclusivity and equity in data, and also the data partnerships, amongst the stakeholders. And when talking about the innovations, maybe we need to take the initiatives to the policymakers, because the policymakers will not necessarily come to you, with those informed decisions where they are needed. So I think those are the takeaways for me on that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Ramu, would you like to add your perspective in terms of top tips for future research and practice in this area?
Yes, certainly on the policy level, we need more insights in terms of how policy support systems can be restructured. We also need to look at what are the enablers and what are the barriers in terms of this change to introduce into the food systems. I think these two are very, very critical. Third is also about the technical aspects of climate, the climate mitigation potential of millets. Not much has been studied on that. I think we need to come up with, because India runs a large program on public distribution system, and the ecological footprint of this is huge, and economic footprint is also huge, and these two are need to be studied. I think the policy dialogue towards this will help to move towards a sustainable food systems.
Thank you very much. I'm looking at you. Do you want to add anything? I know you do.
Always. Okay, so top tip. Basically, from the policy making perspective, many of the policies that we see, not just in India or anywhere outside, but even in the UK, is mostly top-down policy approaches, and not just in the government department, but also at the university as well. So I think the tip would be to have a kind of hybrid approach. I am not saying go all bottom up, but it should be hybridized policy making, where because when you are making policies, there are people who are going to implement it, and there are people who are going to be affected by those policies. If you don't have those views and the blind eyes to how it might affect the people, you would get the retaliation, you would get the reactions from ground up approach, and therefore whatever policies you have made, it might not work. So hybridizing that policy making would be a really helpful research going forward, whatever framework we can apply there. In terms of millets or any other products which are mostly like forgotten food, or the traditional food which was there in our ecosystem, which was there in our diets, I think doing a little bit of more sensory analysis around it, and I think we are moving towards the next theme as well, in terms of the product innovations and things like that. So more sensory analysis to make sure that there are consumers based at the different parts of the world, and their tastes are different. So more R&D investment is needed in making sure that the healthy diet for all is available.
Thank you very much. So I think we're ready for questions. Can I ask one? I've been saving this question for my research interest. So this goes to Ramu, Sonal, and this project. You talk a lot about stakeholders and networks and doing research and consulting different type of stakeholders, but you didn't mention the consumer at all. So how does that come into the equation? How much consideration did you give? I had to Google millets, sorry. And also I'm sorry, maybe it's the word, it's translated in Greek differently. But what exactly did you do to see whether that was a product that could?
First Ramu, and then I'll chip in.
In India, when we talk about consumers, nearly 70% of the consumers are farmers also. So when we try and engage them, they are also consumers. So urban consumers were also involved in some of the discussions and dialogue. Certainly consumption, production and consumption, and only consumption, purchase and consumption. Both decisions were looked at when we looked at the study. So I think involving them is very, very critical. But what is available as information today for consumer to take right choice is not sufficient. I think engaging consumers is very, very important.
So to add to it, the way the government was working there was like it's called PGS system, public procurement system. So they would take what the farmers are growing. However, the intention is that farmers are also the consumers, so they would make sure that the 50% of what they are growing, especially in terms of millets, I'm saying, is consumed within the household itself, so that they are nutritionally secured as well as well fed, and therefore the rest 50% goes into the market. Now, in terms of the urban consumers and making them aware, there are different sort of approaches being done involving directly consumers. Not something that we did. We should have done it given the funding, if there was enough funding. However, we are exploring more funding in and around this area of interest. We would really like a lot of consumers, especially the health focused consumers, the gym goers. They did engage quite a lot with the schools and the school procurement team. So they do have certain products available from the public procurement system perspective. But as in mainstream, main market, it's mostly the advertisement, and it's still not up to the mark for the consumers to pick up those products. But there are progress being made. Just to give you the number, India used to consume around 44 million tons of millets in 1960s. It is consuming only 4 million tons of millets now. So the drop is tremendous. It is forgotten food. What we have asked government to not just keep saying the food for poor or forgotten food, position it as health food.
Thank you all for the interesting discussions. So in terms of policy, my understanding is that it's a slow process, that it takes a lot of effort, a lot of time. Adaptation to new policies is probably challenging, and actually seeing the benefits of a well-introduced policy may also be time-consuming. I was wondering, for the efforts that you've made with the millets and probably other aspects, how do you follow up? How do you continue? And eventually, the end target would be to conclude, have a nice, well-defined policy that is proven to perform as expected. How do you get probably follow-up fundings and continuation of your efforts so they're not be stagnant?
Ramu, do you want to take this, or should I?
You take and then I can join.
Okay. So yes, you are right. It takes a lot of time. Firstly, to build relationship. Secondly, to build the trust. Okay. So we started this conversation, I think, back in 2019, early 2019, and then COVID hit. But we continued with our conversation. We continued with that relationship building. We wanted to understand the pain points of the government. I think that is very important. And then, touch wood, I think luck was on our side, despite the changes in the government. The bureaucrats did not change. The principal secretary, who was actually handling the Department of Agriculture and Farmers Welfare, who understood the research really well, did not change. So I think luck was on our side. There we were a little lucky that we got people who had years. So they were wanting to hear, and they were wanting to experiment, and they were wanting to understand how the research, evidence-based policy, because they came from that particular background. So that ways, I think we were lucky. Secondly, in terms of the funding, yes, it is very difficult. I mean, luckily enough, STFC Food Network has been continuing from 2017 to up until 2025. So we had that sort of time to make sure that we have enough time to engage with the policymakers, enough time to build that relationship and the trust and deliver them the output that was needed for them. And also potentially see initial impact. We won't be able to see the long-lasting impact from STFC Food Network, but the conversation is still going on. And thankfully, Ramu and myself, we have got a small project for the continuation from Agroecology Fund. So it's not just the funding from the UKRI, but we can explore funding from the different organizations, charitable organizations. Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation is also there, which are also working very closely with that department. So our intention is that maybe in future, we should be able to apply for funding with the help of government backing us. Ramu?
Yeah, just on policy research is a continuous process. I think consistency is something which is very, very critical. And many times project timelines and then the policy engagement do not match. So we need to figure out a way of actually continuing the policy groups because the reactions also are very important. When whenever there is a policy decision happening from the government, we need to quickly react and do it. So I think setting up a policy group which continuously follows up on some of these things is very important. So consistency is very critical. So we need to figure out independent financing for such projects.
Good afternoon. So I wanted to know what kind of policy making change should impact the food certifications to be eligible for the food grown in India, especially the millet grown in India, to be eligible for passing the food certifications around the world. Do you think a policy change by any of the government, the center or the state, can make it happen? Or can have some impact on the quality of the food grown?
So in terms of quality certifications, there are systems already available in terms of whether it is organically grown or practicing good agriculture practices. So these two are the two quality systems which are available in the country. I think we need to basically strengthen them. Like in the earlier presentation, I mentioned strengthening the data management systems is very important. But what is not there and what can help is about the ecological footprints and then the climate mitigation potential of the millets. Say, for example, the biscuits which you eat, probably they're made of wheat, and then their ecological footprint is large. But if the same millet is made with millets, the ecological footprint is nearly 20-30% lower. Nutrient content is mentioned, but the ecological footprints are not mentioned. So if the certification systems can also involve that, I think as consumers, as retailers, I think taking better decisions is possible.
Just on that cookies thing, so there are cookies outside on the table made of millets sent by government of Orissa to here for tasting. So please feel free to have it. It has got lower ecological footprint and hopefully much more health benefit than the wheat-related cookies. So Arvind Pari sent it. And then we also have some Nutri bars, which are being made by the different sort of companies and the startups. They are wanting to see whether UK market is the place where they can send the potential products or not. So please feel free to have your hands on.
70% lower, 70% lower. So
thinking about what the UN plenary said about evidence based on science and evidence, thinking about what you've said about consumer opinion, public opinion, changing policy, there's another group of people we need in here, media experts. Because I guarantee you, if I get the Kardashians eating millet, everybody will buy it. I can't stand that. Officially, I can't stand that program. But we talked about getting celebrity chefs and people like that. Poor Michael Mosley's gone, isn't he? But I'm thinking of people like that, that consumer dimension. Look how quickly quinoa went crazy because it was out on the media. It was the new, pardon my French, hipster food, wasn't it? and it was taken. So you're right. And I think I said to Peter just now, it's like patient groups. When I worked on radiotherapy, it's like patient groups, isn't it? Consumer groups. They're embedded in research in radiotherapy. So that was what.
So I'm available.
Thank you. I think the same suggestions was made in International Year of Millets conference, which happened last year from FAO as well. Like, why can't we have, let's say, Shah Rukh Khan, who's like one of the Bollywood actors, dancing around in the millets field, you know, rather than a mustard field. You know, that will give a really nice appeal to consumers, you know, with all his hands up in the air in the millets field. So yeah, things are, we are exploring. Like, you know, I think we have one of the leading Bollywood actress, Anushka Sharma as well, promoting millets and millets consumption, but it's not for, how do you say, it's not the millets that is being made by the tribal communities, it's the millets made by the main big market players. So yeah, there you go.
I think we're on time. So thank you so much to all the panelists.